Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to today's Friday Reflections on this Friday, the 1st of April 2022. I hope you are well wherever you're tuning into this from, and looking forward to Ramadan, which starts in the next day or two, depending on how people calculate the calendar or where you are in the world. Today, I would like to read something from this lovely little book, Journey to the Lord of Power, a Sufi Manual on Retreat by Shaykh Ibn Arabi. And I mean, it's been translated by Sheikh Muzaffar Ozak al-Jarari. Or no, it's actually been translated by Rabia Terri Harris. It's got an introduction by Sheikh Muzaffar Ozak al-Jarari. And because it was a famous Turkish sheikh, wasn't he? And I'm going to start from page 25, and I'm going to read a few pages from page 25 at the beginning of the book. I'm not going to read the whole thing, which is not actually that long. It's only about 30 pages, but I'm not going to read 30 pages. But I'm going to read a bit of the beginning of the book and comment on a few things as I go through these things. And, just whet your appetite if you've not read this book before, or you're interested in my reflections upon the advice of Ibn Arabi on retreats. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Praise is due to God, the giver and originator of reason, ordainer and institutor of the transmission. His are the grace and the might. From him are the power and the strength. There is no God save he, Lord of the tremendous throne. And may the peace and blessings of God be upon him, in whom are established the signs of guidance. Whom he sent with the light by which he guides and misleads whom he wills, and upon his noble family and pure companions until the day of judgment. So in this first paragraph, is praise be to God, acknowledgements that everything comes from Allah, and there is no power and there is no strength or ability to do anything totally or independently except that which comes through the power of God. God is as the Christians say, the Alpha and Omega. He is the beginning and everything. And truly, God is the only power in creation. This is the belief of all Muslims and of a lot of faiths, actually, in one form or another. Faiths that are based upon the belief in God. Even within Hinduism, if you trace it back and understand faith deeply, all of the avatars that they worship, within Hindu tradition, the Hindus believe are really incarnations of God, that they're really all from the same God. So even within the Hindu tradition, which has statues, they still believe behind it all there is only one God. And obviously with the Abrahamic faiths like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, this is even more true. So Ibn Arabi in this first paragraph is highlighting that there is no power except God. There is no strength except God. And then he makes salawat upon the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, without mentioning the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, but it's obvious from, how he explains this. And then Shaykh Ibn Arabi says, I shall answer your question, O noble friend and intimate companion, concerning the journey to the Lord of power. May he be exalted. And the arrival in his presence and the return through him, from him to his creation without separation. It's an interesting line that. The journey to the Lord of power. Okay, so the journey to God, through him, through God, from him, from God, to his creation without separation. Just let that settle for a minute. Journey to God, through God, from God, to his creation without separation. It's a very beautiful, very profound line, and it will probably confuse a lot of people. Basically, we believe that there is no separation between us and Allah. That Allah, as it says in the Quran, is closer to us than a carotid artery that is inside us. How can God be closer to us than the arteries and veins that run through our body, that are inside our body? This means there is never any separation between us and God. It's only if we perceive a separation, that is simply our perception. That the reality is, ultimately, that we are always in the presence of God and we never left the presence of God. And that whatever else we are perceiving, it's a perception. It's something we see, it's something we hear, something we taste. But actually, at all that time, we are in the presence of God. And it is God who is sending us all of these sights, these tastes, whatever we experience. That wherever we look within the creation, that behind that is the face of God. So those of you who are seeing what are my background on Facebook and Zoom, the cherry tree and the tower at the University of Birmingham, very beautiful. The cherry blossom at the moment is absolutely lovely. But behind that cherry blossom is always the face of God. It is Allah who has created that cherry blossom. And Allah is always behind that cherry blossom. It is a veil. And so is that tower, so is everything. There is never any separation. Ibn Arabi continues and says, certainly, there is nothing in existence except God, Most High, his attributes and his actions. Everything is he, and of him, and from him, and to him. Now, this is difficult for a lot of people to comprehend because each of us feels that we have our own separate existence. But did we create ourselves? If you reflect on it, where did we come from? Okay, we come from our parents. We came from a fetus that developed within our mother's womb. Then we were born. Okay, where did our parents come from? Now, whether you look at things from a purely spiritual perspective and say, well, Allah created everything, or if you look at it through science and say, okay, well, humans evolved. In reality, are they not both describing a creation? Initially, there was no life. And then there was life. So where did that life come from? Is it all just random? And if it was, how has it turned out so beautifully and so amazing and so profound? Of course, there are people who believe that. There are atheists, and agnostics, they do believe that. But people of faith, we see deeper meaning in the creation. And whichever way you look at it, we owe our existence, not to ourselves. Even if you take the atheist perspective, we owe our existence to our mother and our father. But then they owe their existence to their mother and father. And going back, no one created themselves from nothing. Okay, once you're grown up and you become an adult, you then can make choices how you're going to lead your life, what you're going to invest your time and energies in, what direction you're going to take. You are then responsible from that point until such a time that either you pass away or you are no longer responsible. But we still didn't create ourselves. No one did. Hence, everything is He. Everything is Allah. And from Allah, of Allah and from Allah, and to Allah. If He were to be veiled from the world for the blink of an eye, the world would vanish at one stroke. It only remains through His preserving and watching over it. However, and this is nothing, Muslims don't believe Allah ever rested after the creation. We believe it is an active creation, that at each and every moment Allah is creating, sustaining, supporting the creation. However, His appearance in His light is so intense that it overpowers our perceptions, so that we call His manifestation a veil. SubhanAllah. However, His appearance, God's appearance in His light, is so intense that it overpowers our perceptions, so that we call His manifestation a veil. So in other words, we are always interacting with Allah, but most of us are unaware of it. And even those of us who are to some degree aware of it, there's only so much of that we're able to perceive, because the presence of Allah is so incredibly overwhelming. It overpowers our perceptions. It overpowers our ability to be able to perceive and process that. So what we see is what we describe as a veil, metaphorically, because we can't see Allah in His true form, because Allah is a light that we cannot explain. We only have reference points to things in the creation. That's how language works. Even it is said that when Moses, peace be upon him, saw something of God, that his hair turned white. It was just so much is, and I think he fainted as well. And this was just like a small amount, just a very small, maybe a drop of Allah's light. It was too much for Musa alayhi salam. And Musa alayhi salam, Moses, peace be upon him, was a prophet of God. Shaykh Ibn Arabi continues and says, I shall first describe, may Allah grant you success, the nature of the journey to him, then the procedure of arriving and standing before him, and what he says to you as you sit on the carpet of his vision. Then from the nature of the return from him to the presence, hadra, of his actions, with him and to him, and I shall describe absorption in him, which is a station less than the station of return. Know, O noble brother, that while the paths are many, the way of truth is single. The seekers of the way of truth are individuals. So although the way is one, the aspects it presents vary with the varying conditions of its seekers, with the balance or imbalance of the seeker's constitution, the persistence or absence of his motivation, the strength or weakness of his spiritual nature, the straightness or deviation of his aspiration, the health or illness of his relation to his goal. So I'll break that down. Shaykh Ibn Arabi is saying that although there are many paths that people take in life, the way of truth is single. It is also meaning that although there are many paths that one takes back to Allah and a realization of divine consciousness, although they are many, but the way of truth is single. There is something that unites all of these different ways. So they might look outwardly different, but there is something that is true of all of them. Ibn Arabi also says the seekers of the way of truth are individuals. Very important point there. So what it means is, and this is also what it describes next, it is the fact that each of us are unique as an individual. The way that each one of us will walk this path is going to be a little bit different. And also this is perhaps an indication as well that when you set off down this path, it's not necessarily helpful to just be blindly following a congregation. If you're following a congregation and just doing exactly what everybody else in the congregation is doing, that's not to say that you shouldn't be a part of a congregation. But if you're just following what everybody else in the group is doing, it might not suit your own individual constitution. It might not suit your own character. It might not suit just you as an individual, because each one of us has different characteristics. Each one of us is better or worse at certain things. Each one of us is triggered or not triggered by different things. Each one of us has different degrees of energy and motivation. Allah has created us as unique as our fingerprints. And just because someone's doing something a little bit different doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. And so Ibn Arabi is saying that although the way of truth is one, the aspects it presents vary, varying with the varying conditions of its seekers. So although it is one, it will look a little bit different for each individual. Ibn Arabi says some seekers possess all of the favorable characteristics, while others possess only some. So we see that the seeker's constitution, for instance, may be a hindrance, while his spiritual striving may be good and will be noble and good. And this principle applies in all cases. So for instance, each of us has our own individual characteristics. Each of us has, even like our egos, is a little bit different for each individual. So it's like some people may have certain characteristics that make this path easier for them in certain ways, and maybe difficult for them in other ways. Some people may have more energy and more drive. Some people, which may help them, you know. Some people will have greater or lesser degree of attachment to the material world. Obviously, that can hinder or, you know, help depending on which way that is within their own character. Some people may have, you know, like big appetites that would hinder them, but other people might have already small appetites. And if you already start this journey with a small appetite for things of this world and for food and for, you know, sexual, you know, attraction and stuff, and appetite, it's like if those things are already starting off, you know, not too much, then it's easier. Whereas if other people will have very, very strong appetites, which are going to be much harder for them to overcome. That's not to say they can't. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are not a sincere seeker, that they're not sincerely following the path. And if you notice improvement in any of these people, then obviously, you know, it indicates that they are sincere and they're doing their best. But, you know, some people have more inner demons than other people. Some people have less inner demons. Some people also, because of the family that they grew up in or their social status, this also can be helps or hindrances. It's very good the way Ibn Arabi explains this. And of course, unless you are in a position where you have become a Shaykh to whatever degree, who is guiding and supporting other people, then this isn't something you should even be really looking at as when it comes to other people, but only towards yourself. Because if you're looking at other people and what they're doing, you know, what are you doing? You're supposed to be looking at your own journey. And even the person who is already guiding other people still has to constantly check themselves, because we're all human. And no matter where we are on that journey, we can either slip back, or we can, you know, pause for a bit, or we can get distracted. So we have to be careful, constantly checking ourselves. And almost certainly that will happen to each and every one of us. And no matter whether a person is just a murid or whether a person is a mashid to other people, they can still get distracted. They can still, you know, so every one of us has to be on guard. We're all human beings. Shaykh Ibn Arabi continues and says, I must first make clear to you the knowledge of the matrices of realms and what these realms imply in this place. The realms, muwatin, is a term for the substrate of the moments in which things come to exist, the substrata of the moments in which things come to exist. An experience actually occurs. So it's like the world that we're in, but there's not just this world, there's other worlds. Hence the term realms and also matrices here. You know, if you think of them, anybody who's familiar with the Matrix film, you know, they enter into a matrix. It's like a world, like this world, but it's another world. And you could do that with other worlds. Now you can do it with virtual reality games. But we are in a realm. There are other realms besides this one that our soul will experience. It is necessary that you know what the truth wants from you in any realm, so that you hasten to it without hesitation and without resistance. The truth here is capitalized, so the truth is referring to Allah. The realms, although they are many, are all derived from six. The first realm is the pre-existence in which we were asked the question, am I not your Lord? Our physical existence has removed us from this realm. The second realm is the world in which we are now in. The third realm is the interval through which we travel after the lesser and greater deaths. The fourth realm is the resurrection on the awakening earth and the return to the original condition. The fifth realm is the garden and the fire. The sixth realm is the sand dune outside the garden. And in each of these realms are places which are realms within realms. And the realization of them in their multiplicity is not within human power. So Ibn Arabi is saying these realms, although there are many, are derived from six. The first is the existence we were in before we were born into this world, where Allah asked us a question, am I not your Lord? This physical existence, how we are, with these physical bodies, whatever, that removed us from that realm and we were born into this earth. So that's the second realm. The third realm is there's like a realm, a world where we pass through after death. So after we leave this world, there's another realm, another world, before we go on to the fourth realm. The fourth realm is the resurrection on the awakening earth and the return to the original condition, so like in the Garden of Eden. The fifth realm is the garden or the fire. The sixth realm is the sand dune outside the garden. So there's another place outside the garden and the fire. And Ibn Arabi says within each of these, there are realms within the realms. So, there are little worlds within worlds within worlds. It's, wow. When you think Ibn Arabi wrote this, hundreds of years ago, and it kind of reads like, it reminds me of string theory, where there's different worlds and we're all like, all these parallel worlds around us and stuff. And it's not saying exactly that, but it does kind of remind me of it a bit. So you have this concept, hundreds of years ago. In our situation, we only need an explanation of the realm of this world, which is the place of responsibility, trial, and works. Know that since God created human beings and brought them out of nothingness into existence, they have not stopped being travelers. They have no resting place from their journey except in the garden or the fire. And each garden and fire is in accordance with the measure of its people. So ever since God created us, we've always been travelers. And we've never had a resting place except in the garden or in the fire. And each garden and each fire, so that means each one of us will have our own hellfire or our own paradise. And it depends on us and our characteristics. So Ibn Arabi is saying that the Jannah or Jahannam that you'll find yourself in after you leave this life will be customized for you. This is what Ibn Arabi is saying. Each garden and fire is in accordance with the measure of its people. Every rational person must know that the journey is based upon toil and the hardships of life, on afflictions and tests, and the acceptance of dangers and very great terrors. It's not possible for the traveler to find in this journey unimpaired comfort, security, or bliss. For waters are variously flavored, and weather changes. And the character of people at every place where one stops differs from the character at the next. The traveler needs to learn what is useful from each situation. He is the companion of each one for a night or an hour, and then departs. How could ease be reasonably expected by someone in this condition? So basically, Ibn Arabi is highlighting that, this life is going to be, it doesn't mean that we won't have happy moments, we won't have good things happen and stuff, but it won't be permanent. That we can't expect to go through life without facing difficulties. There will be difficulties. It's just the nature of things. Because everything varies, everything changes. This world is changeable by nature. So nothing remains permanent. So how can we have permanent bliss within this earth? And we don't stay in one place either physically or metaphorically within our lives. What I'm doing now is not the same as what I was doing 20 years ago. I'm in a different situation. I, also live in a different house than I did then. If you go back 25 years ago, I live in a different city. In another 10 or 20 years, I might be living somewhere else. So, we're always travelers, and how can we expect that when we are traveling, whether we're traveling through time or whether we're traveling through, the earth from one place to another, we can't expect that we're going to be in the same circumstances. So if our circumstances are changing, we're going to have some difficulties and challenges that are going to come out of that. Ibn Arabi says, we have not mentioned this to answer the people fond of comfort in this world, who strive for it and are devoted to the collection of worldly rubble. We do not occupy ourselves with or turn our attention to those engaged in this petty and contemptible activity. But we mention it as counsel to whoever wishes to hasten the bliss of contemplation in other than its given realm, and to hasten the state of fana, annihilation, elsewhere than in its native place, and who desires absorption in the wheel by means of obliteration from the worlds. So Ibn Arabi is not saying this as a caution to people who devote themselves to worldly gain. Ibn Arabi is saying this as caution and counsel to those who are after spiritual aspirations, spiritual goals, such as to, contemplating too much about worlds that we don't live in yet, or, like in the afterlife, or hastening the state of fana. Fana is a state of spiritual annihilation where you are basically totally at one with God. And Ibn Arabi says the masters among us are scornful of this ambition because it is a waste of time and a loss of true rank, and associates the realm with that which is unsuitable to it. For the world is the king's prison, not his house, and whoever seeks the king in his prison without departing from it entirely violates the rule of right behavior, adab, and something of great import escapes him. For the time of fana, in the truth, is the time of the abandonment of a station higher than the one attained. So basically, Basically, I would talk about Ibn Arabi here, but Ibn Arabi is warning that if we over devote ourselves to these spiritual pursuits without living a balanced life, then we can end up wasting a lot of time and lose our true spiritual station. For this world is the king's prison, is implying God's prison, you know, and whoever seeks a king in a prison has very bad adab. So in other words, we should live our lives in a way where, yes, we make spiritual progress, but also progress through life. And we do it in a way which is more natural and more appropriate and more fitting, so that things happen at the right times. There are things we're supposed to achieve in this life, and if we focused on other things, we might not achieve the things we're supposed to achieve in this life. And there are things we're supposed to achieve when we leave this world and we enter into the next realm. There are things that we're supposed to achieve in the garden of the fire. And there are things we're supposed to achieve even after that. So we're supposed to do things at the appropriate time. Ibn Arabi continues and says, revelation corresponds to the extent and form of knowledge. The knowledge of him, from him, that you acquire at the time of your struggle and training you will realize in contemplation later. The knowledge of him, from him, that you acquire at the time of your struggle and training, you will realize in contemplation later. But what you contemplate of him will be the form of the knowledge which you established previously. You advance nothing except your transference from knowledge ilm to vision ayn, and the form is one. In contemplation, you obtain that which you ought to have left to its proper realm, and that is the house of the other world in which there is no labor. So it would be better for you if at the time of your contemplation you were engaged in labor outwardly, and at the same time in the reception of knowledge from God inwardly. You would then increase virtue and beauty in your spiritual nature, which seeks its Lord through knowledge, received from him through works and piety, and also in your personal nature, which seeks its paradise. For the human subtle nature is resurrected in the form of its knowledge, and the bodies are resurrected in the form of their works, either in beauty or in ugliness. So in other words, I'll break this down. A basic principle here that Ibn Arabi is saying is, I mean, some contemplation's fine, but Ibn Arabi is saying don't spend too much time in contemplation when what you will actually receive in contemplation is connected to what you have earned and what you've worked for in life. So we need to balance our lives and not just spend time in spiritual activities, but actually, you know, make sure that we engage in normal day-to-day activities as well. And also religious activities that are, you know, such as, you know, holding events where you bring people together and people spend time in each other's company and you serve people, you know, you give them food, you give them drink, you care for them. Also other activities connected to that, looking after your neighbors, looking after people in your city, you know, being engaged maybe in the work of your town or city that actually is a benefit to the community, is a benefit to people. There's just so many ways. But if we do this, even like doing a normal day-to-day job, and you're just getting on with your normal day-to-day job, but inwardly you are at the same time receiving knowledge from God inwardly. So in other words, you're developing your consciousness of God through doing practical activities. The Ibn Arabi is recommending this and saying this is better than just sitting and contemplating. So it is until the last breath, when you are separated from the world of obligation and the realm of ascending paths and progressive development. And only then will you harvest the fruit which you have planted. If you have understood all of this, then know, may God grant success to us both, that if you want to enter into the presence of the truth and receive from him without intermediary, and you desire intimacy with him, this will not be appropriate as long as your heart acknowledges any lordship other than his. This is the meaning of La ilaha illallah. There is no God except the God. But the thing is, many of us do acknowledge lords other than God. We're under the rulership or devoted to some other kind of ideas, concepts, people, other than Allah and the truth. To a greater or lesser degree, this is true of most people. And this is why Ibn Arabi is saying, if we want to enter the presence of the truth, like the presence of God, and receive from him without intermediary, that's consciously being in the presence of God, because obviously we always are, but we're unaware of it. But to be aware of it and do that, and to receive from God without intermediary, and we desire that kind of intimacy with God, it's not appropriate as long as we are acknowledging any lordship other than God's. For you belong to that which exercises authority over you. Of this there is no doubt, and seclusion from people will become inevitable for you, and preference for retreat or khalwa over human associations. For the extent of your distance from creation is the extent of your closeness to God, outwardly and inwardly. And this is why you tend to find a lot of people on the spiritual path, not only within the Muslim tradition, but also within many spiritual traditions, tend to go somewhere quiet, somewhere in the wilderness, at least for some of their time. Your first duty is to search for the knowledge which establishes your ablution and prayer, your fasting and reverence. You are not obliged to seek out more than this. This is the first door of your journey. Then work, then moral heedfulness, then asceticism, then trust. And the first of these states of trust, 4 miracles before you. These are signs and evidences of your attainment of the first degree of trust. These signs are crossing the earth, walking on water, traversing the air, and being fed by the universe. And that is the reality within this door. And that stations and states and miracles and revelations come to you continuously until death. Ibn Arabi here is saying that the first most important things we need to do is establish ablution and prayers, daily salah, fasting, and reverence of God. We're not obliged to seek more than that. And that's where we start from. And then we work, then moral heedfulness, then asceticism. But we have to establish the basics first before we can go on and do other things. That doesn't mean that you don't, do zikr and stuff, but you should. But the thing is, you don't just wasting, because if you get too bogged down with things before you're ready and practices before you're ready for them, you will overburden yourself. And so you will not make progress, even if you think you are. Ibn Arabi says, and for God's sake, do not enter retreat until you know what your station is and know your strength in respect to your power of imagination. For if your imagination rules you, then there is no road to retreat except by the hand of the Shaykh, who is discriminating and aware. If your imagination is under control, then enter retreat without fear. And again, this is something in previous times people may well have had their imaginations more under control. Today, people's imaginations are on riot. And this is even more true with all of these electronic devices and cell phones, and we're constantly bombarded by imagery, and that imagery feeds our imagination, and it feeds, desires and all sorts. So it would be even more difficult for people to go into retreat now. And especially as we're reading the next thing that Ibn Arabi says, discipline is incumbent upon you before the retreat. Spiritual discipline, riyada, means training of character, abandonment of heedlessness, and endurance of indignities. Training of character, abandonment of heedlessness, and endurance of indignities. That means when bad things happen to you, to accept them, to endure them, not to complain too much, not to make trouble, not to attack those people, to accept it. It's a difficult thing to do. For if a person begins before he has acquired discipline, he will never become a man, except in a rare case. Read their adult, spiritual adult. Obviously, this was written hundreds of years ago. Spiritually mature, I think you could put. When you withdraw from the world, beware of people coming to see you and approaching you. For he who withdraws from the people does not open his door to their visits. Indeed, the object of seclusion is departure from the people and their society. And the object of departure from people is not leaving their physical company, but rather that neither your heart nor your ear should be a receptacle for the superfluous words they bring. Your heart will not become clear of the mad ravings of the world except by distance from them. And everyone who withdraws in his house and opens the door to people visiting him is a seeker of leadership and esteem, driven from the door of God Most High. And for someone like this, destruction is closer than the shoelace of his shoe. So, this is an interesting one, because within an Naqshbandi tariqah, we actually have seclusion, which is actual physical seclusion. And we also have the concept of Shah Naqshband of seclusion while being within society. So it is developing your consciousness such that you are with God, but at the same time, you're not so engaged with the foolishness of society, the distractions. You watch yourself so that you actually stay away from some of those distractions and more of those distractions, and focusing on God rather than those distractions. but at the same time engaging with people, supporting society and doing good work in that way. So we have a slightly different concept of seclusion. Although this seclusion is also within the Naqshbandi Tariqa, and people like Maulana Sheikh Nazim and Maulana Sheikh Hisham, they would have done this. Ibn Arabi continues and says, and occupy yourself with dhikr, remembrance of God, with whatever sort of dhikr you choose. The highest of them is the greatest name. It is saying Allah, Allah, and nothing beyond Allah. Protect yourself from the misfortunes of corrupt imaginings that distract them from remembrance. Be careful of your diet. It is better if your food be nourishing, but devoid of animal fat. Beware of satiation and excessive hunger. Beware of eating too much and starving too much. And that's true of every kind of appetite, you know. Keep your constitution in balance, for if dryness is excessive, it leads to corrupt imaginings and long, serious ravings. So in other words, if we overdo like the abstinence and stuff, we can end up going completely the wrong way, and we end up, you know, desiring things too much, and it drives us into the haram. So, you know, it's better to balance how we're doing things. Yes, try to reduce things that we don't want to be overdoing regarding our appetite. You know, so for instance, food, you fast, but you also eat, you know, you maintain balance. Ibn Arabi continues and says, if there should be an influence which alters the constitution and that is desirable, distinguish between angelic and demonic spiritual influences by what you find in yourself when they come to an end. That is, if the influence is angelic, it is followed by coolness and bliss. You will not be aware of any pain, and you will not undergo any alteration of form. And the influence leaves knowledge. But if it is a demonic, physical disorientation, pain and distress, bewilderment and vileness ensue. And it leaves mental disorder. Protect yourself and do not cease repeating the zikr, the spiritual meditation in your heart, until God drives the demonic influence from you. That is what this station calls for. Be sure that you articulate what you intend. Let your covenant at your entry into retreat be there. Be that there is nothing like unto God. And to each form that appears to you in your retreat and says, I am God, say, far exalted be God above that. You are through God. Remember the form of what you saw, turn your attention away from it, and occupy yourself with dhikr continually. This is one covenant. The second is that you will not seek from him to retreat anything other than in retreat. So the second one is that you will not seek from him in retreat anything other than himself, and that you will not attach your himmah, the power of the heart's intention, to anything other than him, Allah. And if anything in the universe should be spread before you, receive it graciously, but do not stop there. Persist in your quest, for he is testing you. If you stay with what is offered, he will escape you. But if you attain him, nothing will escape you. So this again, this principle of being focused on God, realizing everything is from God, being aware of, like, if you are in retreat and while you're in retreat, seclusion, and if you images and stuff come to you, to know that that is not from God, and God is far exalted be above it. Because we get tested in many different ways. And when we go into retreat, to not seek anything except the pleasure of God, to seek God, and not to be looking for anything else, because That's the whole point. The one who attains God, nothing will escape them. But if you stick with something, then that's what you're left with. I hope you find that interesting. I read up to page 32 there. There's only another 30 pages actually, but I didn't read 30 pages. I missed the introduction and stuff and started on page 25. But so I read 7 pages. But a very good book by Ibn Arabi. If anybody is interested in this spiritual path, it is very well worth reading and reflecting upon. Journey to the Lord of Power. Okay, well, that brings us to close of Friday Reflections today. I've had some comments on my Instagram, but I don't see any questions. So unless there are any questions, then I will close this today. And I look forward to seeing you all on Monday for the first of our Sufi meditations within Ramadan. So before I go, I will wish you all Ramadan Kareem. And may you all have a very blessed Ramadan. And like I said, I look forward to seeing you on Monday in Ramadan. If you are in Birmingham, you are most welcome to join us at the University of Birmingham. And from about 5 p.m. onwards. Also, if anybody is in need to speak to a chaplain, I am usually there on Mondays from 2 p.m. onwards. Between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. I do drop-in sessions with your Muslim chaplain. So you're most welcome to do that as well. Okay, well, I wish you all a very good evening if you're in the UK. And wherever you are in the world, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of God be with you all. Good day.